So you are a man. I like that. Can you tell me, can men get pregnant?
Unless you know something I don't, I think the answer is pretty obvious.
What is that answer, sir?
I'm asking you, is there something you know that I don't know that would say that a man...
Well, I'm asking what you know. Can men get pregnant?
I'm not aware of it.
Okay. Well, Mr. Secretary, materials coming from your department, you've referred to mothers as birthing persons, replacing that title with...
Are mothers not persons?
Mothers are persons, but it seems to be more inclusive, like you're trying to include another gender in that.
I'm all about inclusion, Congresswoman.
There you go. Well, you know, just as a mother of 4 boys, I'm not necessarily offended at that. I am a person, but it's just unscientific and absurd.
How so?
To include men in that, if you're going to be inclusive, if you're going to be inclusive in birthing persons, yes.
Well, but it seems to me that you're trying to define the term.
Reclaiming my time. Can men get pregnant? So then we don't need to include them in this. Mothers are mothers. Moving forward, Mr. Secretary, I want to read for you from a document from your office, the Office of Population Affairs. It says in here, and I quote, "Gender-affirming care encompasses many facets of healthcare needs and support. It has been shown to increase positive outcomes for transgender and non-binary children." Mr. Secretary, what is a transgender child?
A child in America is a child in America, and I hope you and I can love that child just as much as we love our own children.
Can you define what a transgender child is?
That's a child in America, and it's an American citizen child who needs the services and love just the way any other child does.
Mr. Secretary, do you believe that a child is capable of making life-altering decisions to maim themselves?
So let me just say to you that I don't agree with your premise, but what I will say to you is children know much about themselves, and with the help of their...
Do you believe that children are capable of making the decision to self-mutilate?
Again, I don't necessarily accept the premise of your question.
Mr. Secretary, I mean, you have gender-affirming care for young people, so this is something that you have looked over.
I don't equate gender-affirming care to mutilation. So if that's where you're going, then you're not going to get the answer you want.
So, Mr. Secretary here, can you tell me if there have been mastectomies, mastectomies, penectomies, or hysterectomies on children?
Well,
and have taxpayers funded that?
So I could probably use the help of my wife, who's an OBGYN, who could talk more, or maybe Dr. Burgess could help us out here.
For gender-affirming care, to be included in that.
I'm sorry, pose the question one more time, please.
In this gender-affirming care, Mr. Secretary, have there been tax dollars put forward to fund mastectomies, penectomies, and hysterectomies for sex reassignment purposes for minors with gender dysphoria?
So Americans are entitled to receive healthcare services. If they are entitled to receive any of the services that you just mentioned, then it would be against the law for us to try to deny them that care.
So for the record, you favor HHS's funding being able for sex reassignment, for surgeries on minors?
I will do everything I can to defend any American, including children, whether or not they fit the categories you have mentioned or not, and if they talk about gender-affirming care, I am there to protect the rights of any American.
Mr. Secretary, I want to turn to a different document. Your office released this gender-affirming care is trauma-informed care. In this document, you clearly state that gender-affirming care includes puberty blockers, hormones, and surgeries for minor children. You go on to assure parents that there is no scientifically sound reason to doubt hormones and surgeries are helpful to minor children. You also discuss this in a document that the potential for removing children from their parents is on the table if they're not providing gender-affirming care. Mr. Secretary, do you think that parents who believe in 2 genders only should have their children removed from them?
Secretary, Mr. Secretary, you can answer or respond in writing. Her time has expired.
I can respond very quickly. Congresswoman, I believe in supporting and protecting transgender youth. I believe that they, along with their parents and their caregivers, will make the best decisions. And I would really urge that politicians like you stay out of their business?
I would urge that children get to stay with their parents. No matter
Gentlewoman's
what
time has
parents they-
expired. The committee
Mr.
will...
Chairman, may I please have unanimous?
No, you can't. No, you may not. We're on a very tight time frame, and there are
Enter
votes
this into
being
the
called.
congressional record.
You may, oh, yes, you,
Thank you, sir.
without objection, you may do that. All right, the committee will be in recess. Please hurry back after the second vote.
Mr. Chairman, Joe Biden is attempting to fundamentally change our judiciary. Biden has decided, with the complicity of Senate Democrats, to abandon the notion of fair and impartial judges who apply the law, and instead to fill the bench with partisan zealots. Ms. Rickleman, unfortunately, I look at your career and I see that it embodies precisely this pattern. You have spent the majority of your professional life as an extreme zealot advocating for abortion. That is clearly a heartfelt and personal passion of you. It is a passion you've decided to devote your life to. But it is not remotely within the mainstream. Your views on abortion are not middle of the road. They're not views that most people in their typical lives encounter. You believe, for example, that abortion ought to be entirely legal right up until the moment of birth, including in the 9th month of pregnancy. Is that correct?
No, Senator. As an advocate, I always worked within Supreme Court precedent, which only permitted abortion until viability.
You believe, I didn't ask what the law was, I asked what your belief was. You believe that abortion should be legal up until the moment of birth, including in the 9th month.
Senator, that's not a position I ever took as an advocate.
What do you believe?
My personal views will not impact any of my decisions.
Are you willing to answer the question? I understand. I watched you answer Senator Hawley, and you said, oh, I didn't say that there, I didn't say that there. What do you believe?
Senator, the work that I did at the center was to protect women's ability.
Let me try it again. Do you believe abortion should be legal in the 9th month of pregnancy?
Senator, all of my work has been to protect...
So you're refusing to answer the question. I'm not asking about your work. It's a very simple question. Do you believe it should be legal in the 9th month of pregnancy?
Senator, my personal views do not matter.
So you're refusing to answer. All right, let's try something else. Do you believe crisis pregnancy centers are a good thing or a bad thing?
Senator, again, my personal views
You're
won't
refusing to
matter.
answer that question also. So that's exactly what a zealot would do. They won't tell this committee, they won't tell the American people. The reason you won't answer, I believe, that you advocate unlimited abortion in the 9th month of pregnancy is because you know 91% of Americans disagree with you. Tens of millions of Americans who consider themselves pro-choice say, that is crazy to abort a child in the 9th month of pregnancy, and you've spent your entire life fighting for that. Let's take crisis pregnancy centers. You're nominated for the First Circuit. That means you interviewed with Senator Elizabeth Warren, and you got her support. Now, you have very few connections to the First Circuit. You've been in New York and Alaska much of your career. Senator Warren has said, quote, with Roe gone, it's more important than ever to crack down on so-called crisis pregnancy centers that mislead and deceive patients seeking abortion care. Do you agree with Senator Warren?
Senator, as an advocate, I only worked on cases
I didn't ask what you have advocated for. I asked, do you agree with Senator Warren?
Senator, under the Code of Judicial Conduct, which applies to nominees, I'm not allowed to share personal views.
You're not allowed, judicial nominees are not allowed to have any personal views on any issues of public policy? Is that your testimony to this committee?
The Code of Judicial Conduct does specifically say that it would be inappropriate to share any personal views as a nominee because it would suggest that I could prejudge issues. And
so Senator Warren has filed legislation that would shut down crisis pregnancy centers all across the country, denying women care that they need and want. Do you agree with that legislation?
Senator, all of my advocacy has been to help women
Again,
make...
you're not answering my question. Do you agree with that legislation?
Senator, it would be inappropriate for me to comment on pending legislation.
Have you seen that legislation?
I have not, Senator.
Have you discussed that legislation with Senator Warren or her staff?
No, absolutely not.